Really enjoying these 3 days. I didn't even know about the existence of this group until this summer, and it's fantastic. I really love what you're all doing, and I hope I can contribute in a very, very small way. So my work, it falls within the area of what is called Interactional Sociolinguistics, and even though I don't always consider my work in relation to social justice, this has given me a chance to think about it in that way. Let's see, how do I, okay. So what is interactional sociolinguistics? So Debbie Schifrin, a dear friend of all of ours, I think, at Georgetown, is one of the main sort of second generation discourse analysts in this approach. And in her very foundational work, Approaches to Discourse, from 25 years ago, she described it in this way. Interactional sociolinguistics provides an approach to discourse that focuses upon situated meaning. This is very key. Scholars taking this approach combine the ideas of anthropologist John Gumpers and the sociologist Irving Goffman. So it's definitely a triad. It's linguistics, sociology, and anthropology. This then comes from John Gumpers, his sort of thinking about some key aspects of his own field. A main theme of interactional sociolinguistics is the inherent linguistic and cultural diversity of today's communicative environments. That said, as he wrote, research on the communicative import of diversity has been and continues to be plagued by deep theoretical divisions, some of which I think we might have heard today. So on the one hand, there are those who regard communicative practices as shaped by habitus, embodied dispositions to act and to perceive the world that directly reflect the macro-societal conditions, political and economic forces, and relationships of power in which they were acquired, sort of relating back to Bourdieu. Others, on the other side, take a more constructivist approach, claiming that since our worlds, our social worlds, are ultimately shaped through interaction, it is necessary to begin by learning more about the ways localized interactive processes work before we can turn to research on diversity. So we have these two actually quite a bit different approaches. He says then, interactional sociolinguistics seeks to bridge the gap between these two approaches by focusing on communicative practice as the everyday world site where societal and interactive forces merge. The aim is to show how individuals participating in speech exchanges use talk to achieve their communicative goals in real-life situations by concentrating on the meaning-making processes and the taken-for-granted background assumptions that underlie the negotiation of interpretations. So one always starts with the data. It's a grounded analysis. We don't assume anything particular is happening. And then we do iterative process, back and forth, thinking what is being said with very, very clear linguistic focus. And then what are the possibilities that are out there at the habitus level, at the higher levels, that might be telling us about what the language is doing in pursuit of whatever goals are happening. So I enjoy this response by Bailey from 2015 in Encyclopedia entry, and I actually embrace this. He says, with its eclectic toolbox and unabashedly functional orientation, interactional sociolinguistics lacks the theoretical elegance and austerity of conversation analysis or the single-minded determinism of critical discourse analysis. However, it makes up for such limitations with its usefulness and its insights into the social and cultural nature of communicative action. It might be seen as a critique. I actually love it because anybody who's taken classes with me knows I have a huge toolbox. I do not care where these things come from as long as they are helpful to me in solving and helping to solve a particular problem in a very multifaceted way. So I have worked over the years in dementia. I've worked in head injury with soldiers coming back from the first Iraq War at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. I've worked in the Georgetown Hospital thinking about how teams of professionals work together from their different perspectives, diversity in that sense, towards making a good outcome for their patients. I've worked in genetic counseling as discourse, again, focusing on the outcome, what is going to work when it's highly scientific, and psychosocial counseling. This is highly challenging. How do the clients get what they want? In online health support groups, how is it that professionals and lay people and caregivers come together from their different perspectives to get a very good outcome? And then in many, many, many studies between physicians and patients, thinking about how the different perspectives that we heard about yesterday, the more scientific perspective, comes together with the more lay perspective from the patient to have a good outcome. Health literacy and interaction. How is it that people know what they know about health literacy, and how is that expressed and displayed in everyday life? And most recently, creativity and dementia. So I'm going to focus, as Jan did earlier, on a specific area, hoping that that will illuminate and you can extrapolate from that for larger points. So here is what I'm about to talk about. The goal is at the bottom is to work toward improving the quality of life for those living with dementia as well as for their companions. So I take an interactional sociolinguistic perspective, as Gordon and Kraut said, with the linguist's ear and an interest in social justice towards this intersection. So starting with the master narrative, there are competing, this is simplified of course, but master narratives always are. So competing master narratives or public discourses or societal expectations around dementia. Very clearly there is a large neuropsychiatric model where people think about it as a brain disease that is really very, very negative and overwhelmingly powerful. You hear about loss of self, all of these kinds of negative views. Then there is the psychosocial model where we think about the individuals who have the disease and are working in everyday life to do their best, right? So we're not thinking about them in terms of their brains, we're thinking about them in terms of they are humans. So the challenges to be embraced during the exploration of discourse and dementia with this larger interactional sociolinguistic view focus on different levels. So we think first about how public discourse and private discourse are connected to each other. What are the mutual effects? Do people start to internalize what they are hearing and seeing in the news? And then how does that feed back into the public discourse? In the variety of contexts of communication, not just in clinical encounters, not just in everyday home encounters, but a wide variety. What are they doing when they go to exercise class? What are they doing when they go to church? What are they doing when they're talking with their grandchildren? We need to understand in an increased variety of activity types and physical environments. And then also communicative analyses. We need, and this is where you in the room and others can come in, we need increased attention to variation among speakers. There is overwhelmingly work on white people and tend to be middle class and up. We need much, much more about a variety of first and second language speakers, different races, ethnicities, genders, socioeconomic status, et cetera, to really understand the impact of this disease on its people. We also need attention to more nonverbal and non-vocal communication, as should be obvious. If people start to have problems communicating, it can be supplemented and often very well with nonverbal and non-vocal communication. So I'm going to focus here just on one challenge out of the very, very many that go along with language changes with dementia. One is an increased talk in the here and now, which is not normal, right? People don't spend a lot of time talking about what's in front of them. So here's a quick example from my interaction with Elsie when she was cleaning her eyeglasses. She said, and it'll probably go to the other place, and see, it blurs through, so I want to get that over to get this out of it. I'm going to try to put it on and I'll have this on it. And then this, well, I guess I could turn it this way. I could do it that way, yeah. Then she continues, and so they can do it on both sides, to put them on there, and then put another on it. If I can get it to going now then, let's see. That's a lot better. And then this one will be all right, I think. And this one is here. And I'll see how much this is. See? There it is. There. Now that looks better, and this one's better too. So she's talking as she is cleaning her eyeglasses. We also see in a dyadic interaction with another person in her apartment. She's talking with a young visitor, and she says, and this is my chair right here. I made this chair. Oh, you helped to make that chair. I worked for Jim Thorson Furniture Shop. Okay, and that's where this chair was made. And it's already been work done on it since then. It's worn out, and I've had it redone. That's my chair. That's a nice chair. It looks comfortable, says the visitor. And then that thing's mine now, that little table. And she continued to go around the room. Now, of course, one can talk in an interactional way. There were many things that the visitor could have taken up on and moved it along. But from my point here, there's a big focus on the here and now. So what are the real world implications of this phenomenon? How might it be that we can change an individualized way for improved quality of life and still focus on the here and now? We can look to activities where verbal engagement with objects of joint attention is the norm in the here and now. Cooking, woodworking, gardening, visiting art galleries, where it is normative to talk about the here and now. So we can move then, to practices in the art gallery setting, which I have worked on quite extensively. This environment where individuals are encouraged to think aloud with their peers as they engage with artworks as objects of joint attention can be filled with sparks of and meaningful interactions for those who struggle with cognitive flights away from the here and now. So they're focused intentionally on the here and now together. It makes sense because joint attention on objects in the physical environment is an expected process. It also is facilitated by individuals who are good at this, the guides. This contrasts with conversations about topics that are available to conversational partners only or primarily via memory or imagination, which is a problem for those with a higher level dementia. Personal perspectives are highlighted more frequently than factual accuracy. There is often no right answer, and so that reduces the likelihood of face threats for not knowing, which would typically go along with dementia. And opportunities exist for visitors who are struggling with various levels of dementia to evaluate, interpret, tell a story, engage memories, or display reasoning. These are all different levels of cognitive ability that can be applied to and sparked by the same work of art. So I was involved in a study with the National Gallery of Australia where we had 16 individuals with dementia, 8 at an early stage, 8 at a more advanced stage, and they went every week and viewed 3 to 4 works of art. So I don't have time here to talk about the responses, but I'll just give a couple of examples here in this interior in yellow. Individuals with dementia were displaying differing points of view and reasoning.
It's very busy, but it fits, I think it's a tiny room. Is it? Very tiny. It looks well comfortable. It's busy. No resemblance, very tiny. It is a tiny room, and I like that comment because as Grace, as her life went on, her world became more intimate. So it is a tiny room. It feels like a tiny room. It can't be that tiny because look at the bookcase, for instance. I mean, they've only got part of it. Yes. So obviously there's more to do.
Okay, so they're talking in the here and now, but she says, okay, this bookcase, this isn't the whole thing, so it isn't that tiny. It must be bigger. These are all people with dementia who are engaging in the here and now. And then another area, this is another one of my favorites because it sparks so many different kinds of responses. But in this case, do I have time for playing a minute clip or not?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a different kind of, because it displays personal expertise, sorry, instead of simply saying this is tiny, this is big, and engaging at that level. Let's see. Oops. Here. Oh dear. Look at this. Wow. How do I, why is it not? It's disappearing.
She must have over.
Sorry. There, thank you.
What about this floor with all these lines every which way? These polished floorboards. It's got everything in there. It's quite dizzy.
Yes. You think it's with dainty shoes you might slip on that floor. What we going to say to her?
Excuse me, that's the judge standing there. Number 12? Yeah, he's the judge. He's the judge. He's judging. Because the dancing men have their numbers at the back. He has it on the front, so he's the judge. He's the judge. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's it.
Okay, so this is a case where, because she had learned, the woman with dementia had studied dancing and danced many times, she knew the difference between having numbers at the back and numbers at the front, and pointed this out, where even the guides, even though they had worked with many, many people, had never noticed this before. And we can go on and on with this. So these examples illustrate how items not personally connected to individuals with dementia, such as the eyeglasses and the apartment furniture before, may indeed, as Astel et al. Say, provide the basis for enjoyable, shared, positive social interactions where people with dementia can have their emotions and feelings validated. I would consider this to be part of social justice. But what happens after one leaves the gallery? Not everyone can be in a gallery, and not everyone can be in a gallery very often. So my point, and we don't have time for this, but is to take the next step, to take what we learned in the home, go to the gallery, find out better practices, dark side, bright side, and then bring those practices back into training for people on an everyday routine basis. And there are two aspects to this. One is we can enhance the physical environment for richer conversations. That is to bring things in, if people traveled, you bring in and you mark together a map. You can bring in their sort of key things from their life that were important, so you can bring things into the environment to make the environment better, and thereby have these here and now discussions. Or on the other hand, you can train people to use the existing physical environment more effectively. So here we have an apartment with a woman in it, and of course at every moment you can look around the apartment and you can see something that you could focus on. Of course the epistemic stance will be different to this because it's owned by the person as opposed to an art gallery picture. But you can go into this and say what you notice, how it makes you feel, whether it sparks any memories, what you wonder about, and you can go off in these different directions, accessing various aspects of your cognition. So my point is here that in the care of sensitive gallery guides, program coordinators in memory care and skilled nursing facilities, and interested family members and friends, objects of joint attention of any sort, certainly paintings are one, but any kind of object, can serve as physical anchors in the here and now that can spark lively verbal communication among and with those living with dementia. So we have this connection, I believe, to social justice for the what some call vulnerable population. I tend not to want that label, but certainly it's clear that there are problems. In this process, displays of cognition, emotion, and agency can be encouraged and nurtured, aspects of human communication that are central to the ongoing and vital construction of self-esteem and self-identity in all individuals, including those living with dementia. Thank you.